calls with my CFO where I'm trying to rationalize why we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on a piece of creative that's not going to be ready for like 4 or 5 months. The company's still young, but we had a lot of conviction. This was the right risk to take at the right time.
From zero sales in the first 10 days to over $100 million in revenue, David's journey is anything but conventional.
So when you introduce yourself at a party and people say, what do you do? What do you normally say?
I'm a homeless drug dealer. These days, I'm just a guy who likes weed and loves e-commerce.
You're the co-founder and CEO of Mood.com. Some would say you're maybe one of the biggest drug dealers in the whole of the US.
I mean, drug dealers don't have return policies, much less a 100-day return policy.
Self-funded, vertically integrated, Mood now ships federally legal THC products to 39 states, supported by a 200-plus person team and one bold idea.
I went through this whole cycle with watches. I had lust after these expensive watches so that everybody could know I was making real money. And then everything went horribly wrong. Put everything you have into it and then still relearn how little you know about it every few months. There's 3 truths in life: death, taxes, and the only antidote as an e-commerce business is.
So David, pleasure to have you on. You're the co-founder and CEO of Mood.com. Some would say you're maybe one of the biggest drug dealers in the whole of the US. Do you want to tell me a bit more?
Did you say or drug dealer?
Drug dealer, not coke dealer.
We sell weed online. We sell federally lawful hemp products pursuant to the 2018 Farm Bill, which means that we sell cannabis legally online via D2C.
So when you introduce yourself at a party and people say, what do you do? Like, what do you normally say?
Well, so I actually just moved to Austin, but there was a time for like a year and a half whilst I was building Mood when I was just traveling, living in Europe, South America, Middle East. And so then my line was, I'm a homeless drug dealer. And that was true and fun. These days I'm just a guy who likes weed and loves e-commerce.
Yeah. I find it insane that going to the US now, you can just buy it in the shops, right? And it's not even controlled in like, how many states are you allowed to sell in?
I think so we can sell some of our products to some states, and some of our products we can only sell some, or let me rephrase that. We can sell all of our products to some states. We can sell some of our products to some states, and we can sell none of our products to some states. But for example, our gummies, we can sell them to 39 states.
Interesting. And these are THC products. They're not the soft stuff, the CBD, which doesn't do as much.
Yeah. They're real deal THC products. That which is under the federal limit, and then states have their own regulations that they overlay on these as well, which we're always keeping abreast of and very compliant with.
Yeah, so I mean, you've had some pretty explosive growth, right? I mean, I've got no ideas what your exact numbers are, but judging by SimilarWeb and the traffic you guys are driving to your site, something like I could publicly see something like 1.5 to 2 million visits per month. I know that number never actually tracks directly to Shopify or GA or wherever you're tracking it. But how has kind of like growth been since you launched?
Yeah, so we've surfed a couple of exponential waves. Company is now very stably a 9-figure company that's 100% self-funded, never taken on any debt or sold equity. It's profitable. It's been profitable most of the whole time. But there's really been kind of waves of scale that we've surfed along the way, and there's been these kind of distinct phases. At present, we're growing, albeit not as quickly as I would like. And we've been investing over the last 6-8 months in what I would consider to be an exponential curve upwards in terms of team, process, tooling, that we believe is really, we've at our scale, we've squeezed pretty much all of the low-hanging fruit out of the space and out of our company. So we really need to get more sophisticated, reinvent some things on the data side, the technology, being able to move faster, that sort of stuff, digital product work that's going to increase conversion.
Got it. So what were those kind of waves that got you to go exponentially grow? I guess like the 2018 bill happened and then you launched soon after that. Like what happened?
We launched in 22. We launched in August of 22. The first wave was a small one. It was just that like for the first 10 days, I don't think we had a sale. And so I was just calling all of our abandoned carts and trying to figure out why they weren't buying. I found out some things that made a lot of sense, changed the website. And then that was kind of the first wave is like, okay, we can we can spend $1 and get back more than $1. This is sustainable. We can work this. So at that point, we start, buying up more inventory, hiring more team members. We were operating our own warehouse from the start. We just believe that this product is, especially flower, it's a living, breathing product. We don't want that sitting on some 3PL shelf. Like, we really care about our quality. So hiring more warehouse folks, finance and operations and marketing and email and all the things that go together to build a company. And we just started spending more. And that was kind of the first wave. And then we got to a place where we were somewhat stagnant, and growth was there, but not as fast as we wanted because CACs were simply too high. And that's when we went through a real creative up level. I'd always fantasized about working with the Harmon Brothers. You familiar with Harmon Brothers?
Yeah, the comedy sketches, interesting stuff.
Yeah, I'd always wanted to do that. Like, some of my favorite ads ever made are the Lumi work. Lumi deodorant. It's incredible work. And they scaled the shit out of it. And so, of course, first place I went was Harmon, and they said, respectfully, no, cannabis does not align with our Mormon values. Actually, a lot of people don't know that, but yeah, some Mormons doing some absolutely killer work. So we talked to a ton of agencies for this stuff, and we ended up getting referred to some people who were early employees at Harmon Brothers, and they had struck out to do their own thing. So we became their anchor client effectively. And we went out and we made a killer video. I remember the phone calls with my CFO where I'm trying to rationalize to him why we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on a piece of creative that's not going to be ready for like 4 or 5 months. And him pointing to the price, and, the company is like still young and cash flow. Like, it's definitely not at a place where spending hundreds of thousands of dollars is comfortable. We can do it, but it's not comfortable. But we had a lot of conviction that this was the right risk to take at the right time. Worked extremely well. That unlocked a massive new chapter of growth. Over the last year, we've replatformed. Actually, the company has replatformed twice. We are now with Shopify.
You replatformed to Shopify, and then e-commerce went on to Shopify eventually.
Yeah, so now we're on Shopify. Shopify opened their doors to hemp products about this time last year. So we moved over to Shopify, and we've been building up engineering and digital product and data ever since.
Interesting. And then last 12 months revenue, where we sat right now, what's our ARR?
A little north of 100 mil.
That's insane, man. I think you rode the wave, and I think understand why people have gone for the brand, because it's very well presented. And what's your alternative, right? You call a local drug dealer and hope that you don't get like stabbed on the side of the road or something. So it makes total sense.
Yeah, I mean, drug dealers don't have return policies, much less a 100-day return policy, and we'll put our catalog of products and the quality of our products against anything on the street any day of the week. We'll always win. We want cannabis to be something that's accessible and safe to purchase, safe to use, where you know exactly what you're getting. It's lab tested.
I can imagine your customer service inquiries must be hilarious to read. How people like bake lemonade with their you messages.
Some people, yeah, sometimes. That's something we've really invested in over this calendar year. We brought on some tremendous leadership, and this gentleman has really rebuilt our contact center in the image of treat our customers the way we would want our grandmothers to be treated, and that's really what we're striving for, and it's going well.
Okay. And how big is your team? Because I know in the prequel we spoke about, we kind of both bashed on agencies a little bit, because I mean, we've traditionally been an agency for some time. We now kind of work as an affiliate, spending our own cash. You made a choice, a very active choice to, do everything in-house, to have some control. Like, what are the benefits of doing that versus, working with agencies? And I get you work with some select agencies, but you've not passed on the responsibility of performance to them. So what's your thought process around all that?
Yeah, sure. So I don't have anything against agencies, but there's a time and a place for them. I understand how the unit economics work. I mean, basically, an agency is marking up the cost of services, and then they're putting as many clients as they realistically can put under a single account manager or account management pod without losing the clients. That's, that's the way the business is structured. That's how I see it. And there's a time and a place for that because you get to tap into real expertise, a really, if you've done your job and found a good agency, a really deep bench. And if you want to stand something up relatively quickly, or if you have a gap on your team, or if you want to have your team learn some new things, like there's all kinds of reasons why it'd be very appropriate to hire an agency. We've done things in-house because we're performance marketers at our core. And frankly, we just think we can do it a lot better than most agencies can. We're about to be working with an agency right now, though, in a couple of weeks, because my co-founder got on a call with them and said, they know things I don't know. I want to learn from them. They're really competent. Let's see what they've got. And so, we'll see how it goes. And maybe the relationship will last, 3 months, and maybe it'll last 3 years.
Yeah, it's an interesting point actually. We've been in situations where we're running campaigns alongside the brand team. So they'll run a campaign, we'll run a campaign, or set up campaigns, a different ad account. And we'll just kind of like learn off of each other. And we'll see what's working for them. They'll see what's working for us. And, we together build the account. I know there's always concerns around attribution, but, if you do it based on, top of funnel metrics, first click plus 90 days or plus 30 days or whatever, you're bringing in net new traffic to the funnel. So it can work having multiple different partners. But interestingly, every single 9-figure brand that I've come across, they've always done the media in-house. Like I don't think I've come across a single 9-figure brand who's got an outsourced performance marketing agency or team. What I tend to find is they work with lots of different creative agencies. So they might stack up, 5 or 6 different creative agencies at any given point in time. And they'll give them a cadence of delivery for creative. So they'll say, hey, I need 5 ad sets worth per week. Can you go deliver on this? And I've seen people doing that quite effectively. And they just have I've seen some big companies where they have some big DTC brands where they have a massive backlog, 6-month backlog worth of creative ready to test. So at any moment in time, they can just shove the next one in. And I think that's a big part of getting things to succeed. But how does it work with THC and Meta and things like that? Because there are some restrictions. So do you have the same kind of creative testing process that a typical DTC brand would have?
We try to approximate it, but it's very tricky. I'll just say compliance on Meta is very tricky, and we're blocked from being able to do a lot of things blocked from being able to utilize the technology in a lot of ways. So that's, that's just the reality of the space, though. And, we're held to the same standards that everybody else is. So at least it's a level playing field.
Mm-hmm. So, if we go back in time a little bit, so you said you started as an affiliate spending your own money, right? And we were talking beforehand about how it just feels different when you spend your own money versus when it's maybe a client's money, where it's, doesn't come on a bank account. Your kids are still going to eat if you don't, if you don't hit that reverse target. But if you're an affiliate, basically you're starving if you're not performing. So do you think that mindset kind of transmuted from you previously being an affiliate into the company? Is that what's helped you be successful?
It's definitely part of it. I think I really learned my get up and go and a lot of my work ethic from being an affiliate. But it was also a function of having a number of businesses along the years that worked for a while and then really didn't work. So you kind of get the shit kicked out of you enough times that you start to understand the jungle more. And then also I worked for a time at a telehealth company called Fella. I was their interim growth, and I learned so much from those guys. It's a company that at the time they were going through Y Combinator's program, and I learned so much just by osmosis from those guys that I carried on to Mood. Mood is the culmination of all this stuff, right? So if one of those experiences hadn't happened, then Mood wouldn't be what it is today, if it would even exist.
Makes sense, yeah. Coincidentally, we're actually an affiliate for Feder as well. So it's funny you mentioned the name. I was smiling into my head. I was like, oh, I know the brand. Which
that's great. Who do you talk to over there?
I would do my business partner who deals with it, but I'm not actively involved, kind of day to day.
Sure.
My partner would know who it is, but they had some restrictions in the US recently, so I'm focusing on the UK market at the moment.
They got sued. Eli Lilly, them, and 3 others. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bunch of brands who can't, actively sell GLP-1. So, and I think the UK is still fair game. So, yeah, interesting. Yep. So you talked about building the team. The next stage is, you really scaling up operations and doing that. So what is your team structure at the moment? Like, how many people are in the team? Roughly how are they split in terms of operations, marketing, etc.?
Yeah, team is north of 200, but I don't know how much north. Like only a little north of 200, maybe like 210 or 215 or something. Um, Majority of our folks are working in the contact center. That's the biggest org, over 100 people in that, between customer service, concierge team, white glove team, escalations team, outbound sales, um, all that. And then a warehouse. We've got I don't know, 70 people there or something like that. Um, and then everybody else is digital, that's split between marketing and finance and operations and supply chain and email and growth and product and engineering and data.
That's interesting because I mean we're so focused on the marketing side of things. We always think that marketing is everything, right? But it sounds like as a ratio of your whole team side, it's like actually less than maybe 20% or 10%.
Oh yeah, way less. Although what I actually abstract marketing into growth. And what I try to do is champion growth and have everything be effectively enablers of growth, except for contact center, which is really, as an abstraction, contact center is an enablement of retention, which still, to me, feeds into, growing the company.
Yeah, it's like I spoke to some of the team from a nine-figure shapewear brand. People can probably guess who it is from me saying that. But I found it quite interesting that over half of the team was also customer. And I did think over time that maybe using some AI technology and Gorgeous and things like that has got a bunch of AI functionality built into it, that ratio would actually come down. So it's quite interesting that you've still got at least half of your team working in customer. Have you been leveraging AI? Do you find it's useful, or is it speeding people up, or no?
Yeah. We use a bunch of we've adopted AI in most orgs in at least some way, and some orgs in big ways over the last year. And with respect to customer support, I think it really depends on there's two things. One, it really depends on what you're selling and who you're selling it to. Um, we're selling a product that a lot of people don't know that much about. So it's just, and a lot of our customers are older as well. So it just makes sense to have somebody on the phone that, really understands the product and really takes the time. That's another reason why we have so many people. We don't want our customers getting rushed off the phone. If they want to have a conversation and talk about something, we welcome that. We want to build relationships with the people who patronize the company. But AI is coming, of course. You've seen Ava, the AI SDR, and other SDRs that are AI, and like it is definitely coming. We're probably going to be integrating an AI voice routing agent in the near future. So when you call up, instead of listening to a pre-recorded message with IVR options, it's conversational. This is, hey, this is the virtual assistant at Mood. What are you calling in for? And then routes you in accord with whatever you say. So that kind of stuff, yes. But then on other teams, it's mostly with data. For example, like right now we're building an LTV model, or the data team is building an LTV model. They're using machine learning to do that. The director of analytics at Mood has a master's degree in natural language processing. We use 4.0, ChatGPT's 4.0 for tons of stuff. Anything from brainstorming around R&D and formulations and form factors to writing emails. I mean, although you got to be careful with M dashes these days. Everyone, yeah.
I think the M-dash police, always gets me. Sometimes I deliberately use them just to troll people and be like, yeah, fuck you, but just M-dash the shit out of his post. But it's funny because I tend to actually own LinkedIn posts and I just get GPT to just tidy it up a bit sometimes. But I actually prefer writing copy without kind of done a 180 on it. I used to use it for everything, and now I've kind of like dialed it back in a little bit for copywriting specifically. But for writing instructional documents and boring stuff like that, like I wrote a code of communication policy for the company, and I was like, well, I can either ask somebody to do this, or I'll just get GPT to do it based on all the context, all the rages I've had with GPT over the last year of complaining about people and things. I'm like, write me a code of conduct or communication policy that's going to make sense based on everything you know about me. So I think for those kind of things, it's exceptionally good. But so do you use the pilot personally yourself, or what tools are you using the most day to day?
Easily 4.0.
Yeah.
I use it. I use it to help make complex decisions. I mean, obviously, like just here's an email, reformat it, that kind of thing is, helpful sometimes. Although I try to use that very sparingly. I think writing is so important to be able to articulate thoughts and the mechanic. It's great for your brain. But yeah, complex decisions, research. I use it, I just moved into a new house. I use it to handicap how good or how competitive a quote from, an HVAC guy is. I use it for everything. Although,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No, to the HVAC guy.
Yeah, but did you see the study? It was like by like 6 or 7 folks from MIT, and it came out a couple of weekends ago, and it was about effectively brain rot from reliance on LLMs.
Yeah, I didn't see the study, but I can totally imagine the impacts it's having. And actually, the next generation is completely screwed because they're just going to become fully dependent on it, right?
Yeah, I think so. But then at some point, okay, so when that happens, you chase that to its logical conclusion, and the only utility for those people is prompt engineers. But then when AGI comes out, you're not going to need prompt engineers. AGI will prompt itself better than any human. So what is the point of the human in the process?
We're going to end up in a theological conversation here quite easily. But my theory is we'll end up, I think Elon Musk coined it as post-capitalism, right? It'll end up in some kind of a utopia where everyone's just like got everything they need pretty much, at least within the Western world. And so we don't need to work as hard as we used to work. But in the process of doing, we'll lose control and power over what makes us human. And that's a shame, but it will happen. And there'll be a few people who will control everything, and the power will get, aggregate to just those handful of people. And I think that's what will happen.
I don't disagree. I thought that this is back in like 2017. I was talking about humanoid robots who are doing everything from house chores to agriculture, and the world will become a utopia, and universal basic income is just inevitable. And those is boundless prosperity. But then, yeah, in doing so, you do lose what it means to be human, or at least the meaning behind what it means to be human. If we don't have things to work for, I mean, we're beasts of burden. We need things to work for.
Yeah. I think the sales for mood.com will go up because people are looking for enlightenment and some newfound creativity that they can't find anymore, right? So they'll start taking LSD and like all kinds of stuff to find that voice.
Hopefully, in a rational world, we do see the broader legalization of psychedelics. It has to be done safely and responsibly, and I think you're starting to see that in the United States. Even red states starting to approve things like research into ibogaine or psychedelic mushrooms. Even red states. So it's coming.
Yeah. Just go back a couple of steps. So you've got 200 people working underneath you. How do you spend because I think about this a lot, right? I'm CEO of a company, and I'm always often confused actually, like where to spend my time. Right? That's like the hardest thing to actually do. It's like, okay, on Sunday night, I literally think, okay, what am I going to do the next week? I literally have no idea. I have to sit and think for like 2-3 hours. Okay, what is the most important problem? Do you find yourself going through the same thing, and have the problems changed as you've progressed through the revenue?
Yeah, sure. So I'm like a cyclops, and I've only got one eye, and I just kind of turn my cyclops eye on any given org or problem. I'll go for like a couple of weeks, and I'll hero a bunch of stuff and try to rebuild something, and then have the team inherit whatever it is that I've done. Sometimes it's more of a quarterly basis. But I'm just constantly working. My wife, we're in the grocery store, and she comes up, and I'm at the, picking out corn, and she starts talking to me. After like 10 seconds, sometimes she'll say, "Oh, wait, you're working, aren't you?" Yes, I am. I'm deep in thought, thinking about the business more or less all waking hours of the day. And then when it comes to actually getting stuff done, that's something that I really try to bring people along with me. I try not to be, the dictator who says, "Here's what we're going to do. Shut up. Don't ask me questions about why. Just get in line." I try to say, here's a goal. Here's a problem. Here's a solution. We're going to try this. I need you guys to be doing this. I need you guys to be doing that. I'm going to take my part of it here, but eventually I'll pass that off to you, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's interesting they use the terminology you try to, because that was a balance, right? Because as a CEO, you're ultimately accountable for making sure things work. So often, and I find myself doing this as well, right? Jumping into problems that I feel like I probably am overstepping and shouldn't jump into. but I have just an inclination to do so because I can see it going not the way I imagined it would go. I'm assuming that that's a similar. That's why you said you try to, because sometimes you have to jump in and just roll up your sleeves and do stuff, right?
Yeah, it's this interesting dichotomy of, necessarily needing to believe that you know better, at least about a lot of things, whilst also remaining humble and collaborative. Because, many times I have strong convictions and it turns out that they're not true. Um, again, it's a practice. I try to adopt a practice of just being really open-minded, seeking truth, right? I'm not going, we're not going to make more money if David has to always be right. We'll make more money if David seeks truth.
So that's a good way of putting it. And I think it's a continuous process of building your ego and then breaking it back down again. And it happens continuously, right? Because you feel like you know what you're doing. And then it's like, oh shit, no, actually, there's a reason why this business is making 2 times as much as I'm doing, because the CEO and the founder, the execs are making different decisions. They're thinking in a different way, So whatever you think is true now, the truth is as you grow, that's going to change. And you have to come to the acceptance that it's always going to change. And it makes you less precious about the decisions that you make now, because you know that if you're growing and if growth is like let's say you presume that you're going to grow, so you're deterministic about growth, you also have to be deterministic about the fact that you're going to think differently in 6 months, 12 months than you did now. And I think that was a big, powerful shift that I've had personally. And it sounds like you've been through a pretty similar journey.
Definitely. I mean, it's very humbling to stick with something for years, and something of your creation for years. Put everything you have into it, and then still relearn how little you know about it every few months.
Yeah, and I think people fall. I definitely into this trap. You make your first bit of money, and then you think that you know everything because you've all of a sudden just elevated above all the people around you that you grew up with, and so you think, "Oh, I'm the shit. I'm the bomb. I know what's going on, right?" And you buy your first supercar, blah blah blah. And I went through my process. I bought like 7 cars in 2 years, and my dad told me, like, "What the fuck are you doing? Like, don't do that." And he's totally right. And it's just I paid the cost in the mental load of having that for a number of years afterwards. But I think like you soon start to kind of go back down the curve of your ego comes back down, and you gain that humility over time when you just realize how little you actually do know, and how what you achieved is such a small blip amongst everything else is possible. And you kind of you go back up that journey of enlightenment. You kind of figure out more about your stuff than you didn't realize was there.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's about finding validation from within, and that's so much about actually having real meaning and real purpose to what you're doing. Because when you do have internal validation. You don't need external validation. I went through this whole cycle with watches. When I was kind of first starting to make some money, I'd lust after these expensive watches so that everybody could know I was making real money and I'd done it. And then eventually I got to a point where I could buy some watches and I'd wear them every day. I think Kanye famously said, "I promise I'm so self-conscious. That's why you always see me with at least one of my watches." That was me when I was like 26 or something. And then everything went horribly wrong. I had to sell the watches to be able to pay rent. And then things, you go through those cycles, and then things started going well again. And I got another couple of watches. And then at some point in time, I stopped wearing them because I just didn't care. That was when I had for me, it was when I had real purpose and meaning, fulfillment. Didn't care about it. It's clunky. I have time on my phone. I don't need to wear a Rolex.
Yeah, it's kind of like you never want your value to be associated to the things that you have, because ultimately that can be taken away. And in business, I don't know if you feel the same as I do, but I feel like no matter how much you scale, you always feel like you're building a house of cards. And at some point, someone's going to pull one of those cards out and it's going to come collapsing. So if all of a sudden tomorrow you've got to eat that humble pie and sell all the Rolexes and all the cars and this and that, you don't want to be in that situation. So it's much better to leave people guessing. I don't know how much that dude, what he's doing as he's walking down the street. I think it's a much more comfortable existence.
Yeah, it's more comfortable. But it's like, you have to live with yourself at the end of the day. And so you might as well really love yourself and really get in love with what you're doing and the way the decisions that you're making.
I've got one question actually. How do you know when to hire like a true expert? Like you mentioned having a guy who did, what was it, a PhD, or
He's got a master's in natural language processing. I mean, that one I stumbled across. This is a guy that I was friends with since the time I was 8, like a childhood friend. And we drifted after high school, like many high school friends do. We're still buddies, but like didn't talk much. There was a Forbes article that came out about mood, and he messaged me. He said, "Hey man, I just got my master's degree in natural language processing. Do you guys do anything with the AI?" This was a couple of years ago. I think it was before ChatGPT. AI wasn't really a thing that was in what it is now. And I said, I don't think so, but maybe. This was part of the team building side where we didn't have any data infrastructure there. And my CFO was building out supply chain and finance at the time and was severely underwater, needed a helper. But I said, hey, I'm going to recuse myself entirely from this situation. Went to my CFO and said, hey, I grew up with this guy. I can vouch for him being very smart and very honest, but he should be held to more scrutiny than anybody else that we've ever hired because he's my mate from childhood. So Ben said, yeah, of course. And Ben's a Brit like yourself. And he's like a very cut and dry, sort of personality. And so Ben took him on to do some small projects, building out an NLP model to better understand our reviews and tracking customer sentiment with respect to certain products over time. And it went really well, and he thought he was impressed. So he gave him some more and some more. And, a couple of years later, now he's our director of analytics with 5 data analysts underneath him, and he's earned every step of that, and it's really driving the company forward to some exciting places.
I think it's all about finding the right people and then accelerating them as fast as possible. So when you identify, you give them something small to tackle, and when you identify that they absolutely crushed it and they want more, you just got to keep feeding them with like more and more and more. And there's certain people in companies who just maintain things and keep them going, keep the machine going, and there's someone who like really, really like turn the dial up for you. And it sounds like you found the latter.
Thankfully, yes. And I think your initial question on that was, it was how do you identify the people that you do need in order to go out and find them? I think the benefit of not coming from big corporates is that you're not laden with a bunch of corporate bullshit and bad habits, being really scrappy and resourceful. The downside is that you've never seen a structure of how things should be done or how things should properly be done within a very comprehensive org. So like there's things that I just didn't know like existed, like the notion of having a director of analytics, or like 6 months in, I was doing everything on operations. I needed a project manager. I'd never heard the term project manager before. I didn't know that was a job. So, but my CFO, he did have that experience. He'd worked at startups and big corporates and cut his teeth at Rolls-Royce. Like he'd seen how proper companies are run. He said, you need a project manager. So thankfully I surrounded myself with enough people like that who said, hey, you've never heard of this, but you probably need it.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because when I reviewed the org chart of another D2C brand that had more than 300 staff, I think they had all these job titles that I've never heard of in my whole entire life. I was like, why do you need a director of communication? Like, why do you need somebody to what does that even mean? Right. It just opened my eyes in the same way that I think your eyes have been open. The fact that, as you scale up, when you get from 10 to 20 to 30, 40 people or whatever, and then you go to 50 to 100, the roles you need are just so different. And you can't expect your org structure to scale in the same way at every step.
Yeah, you can't. You just can't. Yeah.
Yeah, but we're around about 40, 50 headcount at the moment, and I anticipate that I'll probably be calling you when we get to 100 and be like, dude, what do we do now? Because is it time for me to hire a director of communication? Or what do I actually need? So I'm always keen to like that. People who've been operating and have done what they've done. So, okay, just to kind of round up, so what's next for Mood? Like, where's it going? What's the direction?
We're battling a lot of state level political battles right now, trying what we want are sensible hemp regulations and an open, free, safe market. The hemp should be the land of mom and pops, not big corporates. So that's what we're fighting for. And there are a lot of states where we're under fire. On your side of the pond, you might not have seen, but Texas recently banned all hemp THC products. And as of a couple days ago, after a real nail biter of a month, Governor Abbott vetoed that ban. So now we're going into special session, and we're going to try to create a framework that's sensible and safe. But that times these days, we do a lot of lobbying these days. That's kind of keeping the space legal. All of that aside, we're really excited about what we're doing, what we have in the works for the website right now. We're trying to really flip the paradigm of kind of Web 2 on its head and make something that's extremely accessible and educational for first-time users. We're probably going to be sponsoring a movie in a few months, a Hollywood production that's going to be very cool. Hopefully this movie becomes the next Pineapple Express. That's sort of the plan. So we're taking those kind of interesting swings on marketing. We're also working right now on AI video like everybody else. Did you see the Call She ad?
The what, sorry? Call She ad. What's that?
Oh, yeah, Call She. So Call She is a competitor to Polymarket. Call She recently dropped this ad. It's 30 seconds AI only ad that's gone really viral. So we're experimenting with that sort of format, trying to drive more creative iteration. And then eventually for Mood, actually also big for Mood right now is wholesale. We're going really hard on our push with beverages. We've formed partnerships with a number of large beverage distributors and rolling that out in the coming months. The way we see wholesale is it's a great place to introduce customers on shelf, is a great place to introduce customers to your product. The margins suck. It's brutally competitive, but it's a fabulous place for brand awareness. And beverage is a great entry-level SKU. You can have a low-dose 5 milligram beverage, and you can have a couple of those at a barbecue, and you're buzzing. You shouldn't drive, but you're buzzing. It's a very approachable type of experience. And then otherwise, international expansion. Hopefully, we need relations in Europe to come along a bit more than they have. But we believe that our model of direct-to-consumer cannabis is viable anywhere where the regulations are permissible.
Makes sense. And I guess you built the case study for the US of doing it in a safe, friendly, good customer service type way, so that when you approach those new markets, you're going to be at the front of the conversation to make it happen. So it makes total sense. And a final question from me: if you were to go back in time and you were going to do this again, and if you weren't going to do it, and you're going to start again tomorrow in the DTC e-com space, what would you do?
Like what business?
No.
It'd probably be gummy based. Maybe it was probably like 5 or 6 years ago, Goalie came out. And Goalie reinvented nutraceuticals. They were the first company to prove that people want gummies. In Goalie's case, apple cider vinegar, I don't know how much apple cider vinegar was actually in those gummies, but I think everyone can agree those gummies were more like candy than they were like a hardcore nutraceutical supplement. But massive success because everyone knows apple cider vinegar is good for you. It tastes horrible and gummy tastes great. Since then, of course, you've seen a number of gummy companies riding that wave. And now you go into the aisle of a pharmacy and all the supplements that used to be pills are now gummies. I still think that there's juice to squeeze there and that there's interesting form factors that haven't been discovered or interesting formulas and use cases that can be efficacious in gummy form. At this point, the low-hanging fruit has been picked, like apple cider vinegar and that kind of stuff, or basic ashwagandha or immunity formulations. If I was going to go out and do it, I'd probably spend 6 to 12 months in R&D trying to find efficacy, like real hardcore efficacy that is not being achieved in another product. And that's where I'd innovate. And then, the marketing, the growth, that can come. But retention is what it's all about. There's 3 truths in life: death, taxes, and rising CPMs. And the only antidote to rising CPMs as an e-commerce business is retention.
Interesting. Just the R&D process for a second. So if you spend 6 to 12 months R&Ding a product, where would you, other than Google and ChatGPT, would you read papers? Would you speak to scientists? What would you do?
Yeah, so you did at least 2, if not 3 kind of pieces of that. But sure, you'd use ChatGPT for formulations and exploration. You'd want a food scientist. You want to partner with a food scientist who, because AI can hallucinate, and AI at this point is not as good of a research assistant as a food scientist. So you'd go out, you'd try to make plausible formulations, and then you need a manufacturer to create, iterations A through Z. And it really does need to be that exhaustive, because the hard part about a gummy is that in a 5.5 gram gummy, you have about 500 milligrams of room for actives, and everything else needs to be filler for the gummy, or else you compromise the form factor. And it just won't stay together. It'll taste horrible. So what you need to go out there and do is find the right combination of ingredients that work together synergistically and only 500 milligrams in order to produce efficacy. If you want a single gummy product, which is, Gruns. Are you familiar with Gruns?
Groups, no.
Gruns, Gruns. It's basically athletic greens in a gummy.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they're probably the most exciting D2C business of the last 2 years. They're less
I'll
than
check
2
them out.
years old. Yeah, they're less than 2 years old. They just got a $500 million valuation. It's a little pack of gummies. I think the serving is like six little gummies, that sort of thing.
It's interesting you say there's a great market, because I literally became a customer very recently of gummies. I started taking creatine gummies because I was buying the powder, and the powder just tastes like, especially the unflavored stuff. And then I bought the gummies off. I just bought them from Amazon. I got them because all the guys in the office had the little things from Amazon. I was like, oh, they look nice. So I'm just going to bought them from Amazon. So I can see that working. But I think they couldn't find a sugar-free version. So if anybody's on like calorie deficits and trying to diet or whatever, I mean, I just bought the sugar one, but I couldn't actually find one that was sugar-free unless I didn't see it. If somebody finds one and sends it to me, I'll buy it.
Yeah. The creatine gummies are interesting because there's a company called Create. I think it's called Create Creatine Gummies. And they were the first one. I think they were the first ones. I believe so. And they hit that hard for about a year, and then you started seeing all these copycats pop up. Create's gummies actually have creatine in them and the amount that they're supposed to have. Most of the stuff on Amazon does not. There have been a number of kind of case studies where people buy like 10 Amazon creatine gummies. They get them all tested. Some of them have no creatine. Some of them have like a tiny bit of creatine. But it turns out it's just as creatine is awful to drink. It's really hard to put enough creatine into a gummy that it's efficacious whilst not being grainy and just nasty.
Looks like I'm going to have to switch supplies now you said that. I'm going to go back and do some research on that study that's been done. But there you go.
Yeah.
Dave, it's been a pleasure to have you on. Thank you. We'll definitely keep in touch as we both scale our businesses. Appreciate you.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me.